Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Expert. I'm your host, Devin Miller, a serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Craig Rupp. And Craig is going to be talking about a few different things about product development and testing and understanding the level of testing that's needed for product development, a little bit about how sales and marketing and how it's hard and how you go about educating a market on why they need your product, building a sales force, as well as finding the right type of a salesperson. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Craig.
Well, thank you, Devin. Thank you for having me on
Absolutely.
your podcast.
Hey, excited to have you here, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation. So now for the audience, in case you didn't catch it, Craig has been a guest on the sister podcast, The Inventive Journey. So if you want to find out a little bit more about Craig's journey, definitely feel free to go and catch up his episode there. But for those people that haven't had a chance to catch the episode or just saying, hey, I just want to learn about a little bit about Craig and then get to the topics at hand, give the audience a quick introduction to yourself.
My name is Craig Rupp. I grew up on a farm in Northwest Iowa. And in 1984, I knew that farming was the last thing I wanted to do in my career. So I became an electrical engineer and spent the majority of my career in the wireless industry. But then I have this ag background, and I guess it kept pulling me back, my career back into agriculture. I worked for John Deere for a number of years, developing some of their technology. And then I started a company called 640 Labs, which was an agriculture data type of company, got acquired by Monsanto in 2014. And then I spent 4 years at Monsanto, and then decided that I'm going to go out and take autonomy into agriculture, and founded a company called Sabanto.
Awesome. No, that was a great introduction and a great journey that for people to hear about. Now, diving into the topics at hand, I think one of the questions, that people often have, after you get through with setting up your business, getting a logo, maybe getting a website, but pretty early on is a lot about product development and testing. And, you see everything from people to say, hey, I don't need to test it. I know I am the audience. I know exactly what it needs to be and exactly how to build it. They don't ever test a product, and they get all the way through the product's developed, and lo and behold, it doesn't work, doesn't function how they want, or it functions exactly how I want, but nobody else wants to buy it. All of which, when you're going through that developmental process, a lack of testing. Or you have the opposite, which is people over test it, and they just test everything, and a 2-month project turns into a 5-year project because you're testing every possible eventuality and looking at everything else, and it delays the product so long that you miss your window, or you get burned out, or you run out of funds or whatnot. So give us a bit of an insight when you're looking at kind of product development and testing and needs testing out the needs and everything else. Hardware, software, whatever the product is, how do you go about figuring that out?
Yeah. I've always said in my career, engineering, you spend 10% of your time actually designing, let's say, circuits or designing the technology, and then you spend the 90% fixing problems that you overlooked. And I'm a stickler for testing and measurement. I did spend 9 years of my career at a company called National Instruments, which is a test and measurement company. Specifically, and I'll go down the hardware path because I've done quite a lot of hardware development in my career, product development, and there's a certain level of testing that engineering needs to do, and then there's a certain level of testing that manufacturing needs to do. And, I think, what's amazing is a lot of people who are doing product development, they really don't capture a good requirements document. as to, let's say that I'm designing a power supply. What's the line regulation? What's load regulation? What's the output supply? Parameters, noise. There's all these specifications that you should sit down and actually think about, because they do have a bearing on your product. And then meanwhile, having the discipline of creating a test plan and then executing on said test plan is very important. And I know in startup, you're supposed to go, but there's still some fundamental procedures and processes that I think a lot of people overlook. And, in regards to hardware development and testing of hardware, running, I'm just amazed at some of these electronic designs where they don't run them over temperature, and they don't run them through some IP testing, going through a shake test, a water ingression, a dust ingression, tests like that, I think are very important. And if you can get through that, and if you've written a very good test plan for that, you're going to have a pretty good product. And you're gonna catch a lot of problems from the get-go, as opposed to handing it off to a customer and having them fight.
And I think you identified, maybe just to help for the audience, I think that and I probably overlooked it as well, or didn't, or highlight on the question. When you do testing, I think there's a couple, and maybe more, but you can certainly fill it in, but a couple different types of testing. One is, does the product have any flaws? In other words, whether it's software, hardware, is it going to crash? Is it going to break? Is it going to not function properly? Is it going to be a safety hazard? And kind of going through all those. And then there is a separate kind of product testing where it's not necessarily, is it going to hurt someone or is it going to break, but more, is it a product market fit? In other words, does it solve a problem? So you're testing out more of the idea or the concept or the market or the product idea. And so it's not necessarily will it break, but should I even pursue it? And so where do you start? I mean, what's the balance? Is it, hey, you got to go, is it an iterative, you go back and forth and you fix a problem and you see if it still works in the marketplace? Or should you do all of the product testing before you go and talk or show to customers, or go to the customers and make sure, that they like it before you do the product? Or kind of, what is that balance, or what is that iteration?
Yeah. So, that's a good point, Devin. What I was talking before, it was more along the lines of what we always refer to as verification testing. Whereas the testing, you're testing to make sure it meets a certain requirement. Now, but then there is what you're referring to is called validation testing. And that is when you go out early and you figure out, hey, do customers actually like this? Do they, given that, you create your minimum viable product. And to your point, things might kind of sort of work. There's this old saying, you've heard this before, that if you're not embarrassed by your MVP, then you've gone out too late. And we certainly have done that, where we've put together the basic components, and I mean, this is by no means a shippable product. However, I got it into the customer's hands, and they can see through the fog, does this work? We need to improve on this. And it's a great way for that validation testing to actually give it to a customer and have them, report back, what exactly they liked, what they didn't like, where you need improvement. And that's really what's interesting is in our journey, we went out to some farmers who, they really got the first taste of, what this product can do. And they came back and they had some really great feedback. And what's interesting is, it's the old crossing the chasm, where you get these farmers and they're early adopters. And what they'll do is they like to be the first one with with the newfangled technology, and they enjoy doing that throughout their career. They've always done that. They're the first ones to try something new, and it's really important to find those people. And what they'll do is they'll cut you some slack. but they'll be, they'll also they'll be forthright in any criticism, and they'll keep it to themselves. They won't, jump on social media and say, "Oh, this product sucks," this, but they'll actually try to help you because they want you to succeed, and they'll do, they'll do all they can to help you in that aspect.
No, I think that that definitely makes perfect sense, and I like, it is one of those that it's hard. I agree with you in concept. It's a lot harder in practice. If your product isn't where you're a bit embarrassed of it, you probably developed it too far, and yet it's always that balance, because you're also saying, hey, if I don't have enough of the concept there, they're not going to get it, or I'm not going to get a good enough feedback, or it's going to be embarrassing. I'm going to ruin the potential clients or customers because they it's going to be so off-putting to them, or it's going to be such a unprofessional product. And it's always one that you can easily tell yourself that you need to have X, Y, and Z more features, or X, Y, and Z more things. And sometimes you do. I don't think you want to put out something that's so terrible that nobody would ever get it. But if you wait too far, you probably are missing the mark, or you're missing an opportunity to sell. So I think that both of those, testing the product so that before you start taking money, it actually works, and also testing the product and seeing it's a market fit way before you're trying to put it all the way out in the market, are both valuable insights.
Absolutely.
So now shifting gears just a little bit, because there's a lot of fun things to talk about, and I want to hit on another one, which is, and I think when we talked a little bit before this interview, was that sales and marketing is hard. In other words, it's hard. It's hard from one of the things I think there's a lot of things that make it hard, but one of the things I think it makes it hard is if you're going into a market where you're having to educate your audience. In other words, if you're just doing a drop shipping where it's the same product and you can do it a little bit cheaper, a little bit faster, have better customer service. Not saying that's a bad business, but you're not having to educate the market because the clients already know, or the customers already know what the product is, how it works, why they need it. And now they're just competing on price or customer service or experience. But if you're creating a new product, or a product that's better or more inventive, or offers new features or does something different, and you're having to go out and educate the audience as to why they need it, first of all, what the product is, why they need it, why it's different, why they should pay your money, that's a pretty good lift. And so, with that, how do you go about educating the market on why they need your product or your service?
Well, I mean, so we're deploying autonomy into agriculture, and every farmer that we talk to knows that labor is a problem, and it's not going to get any better. So the farmers, our customers, know that they have a problem, and they know that autonomy is going to be the solution. Now, the trick is for us to, if you've ever worked with a farmer, they're very, this is what I did last year, this is what I'm going to do this year, and getting them to change their practices or change their business ever so slightly to adopt your technology is really the trick, because a lot of them, we're working out with a product that is going to be used in, for example, the springtime and also the fall. And it's a really, really busy season for them. And you would like to think farmers aren't like manufacturers, where even though they are manufacturing a crop, essentially, the difference between farmers and your classic manufacturers is farmers are completely ad hoc. In the spring, God only knows at 8 o'clock in the morning when they're out there in the field what's going to happen that day. They could have flat tire, they could, their tractor might break down. So they're very ad hoc in how they handle things. And, to come in with this new technology, and we're going to add another layer of complexity or chaos into his life, then, there's an issue there. So, so we're looking at it as to how can we introduce this technology such that it doesn't have a large bearing on what they're currently doing today.
Mm.
and showing them incremental improvements in, their procedures today. That is really what we focus on when we go out and approach farmers with this technology.
So let's maybe just kind of expand on that example just a bit. So let's say, and I'm going to make up a new invention that I have no idea how it's going to work, but you came up with an invention that reduced the water consumption of crops by 95%. So it would be awesome. Everybody would love it. And so now you're saying, it's a easy problem that people are going to want to solve. So it's one where they recognize, hey, if I'm in a drought and I have to use less water, or water is expensive, if I can reduce that, great. So now you're solving a problem that people are going to need, but you still have to go out and educate. In other words, first of all, they're going to think you're a snake oil salesman, or that how's it going to work, or you're going to have to even find the people that you're going to go out and talk with or start to educate them on what the product is, how it works, how expensive it is, how easy it is to implement, and all those things. So let's say I came to you with this invention, say, I'm going to give you the whole invention for $1. You're going to go out, you're going to sell it and make lots of money. How would you kind of go about tackling or approaching or finding out how to start to educate the audience on that type of a product? As an example, is one that it doesn't actually work, but it'll be a fun conversation.
Yeah. I think the first thing you need to do with the clients that we deal with is, number one, you have to sell to them. It's almost like pitching a VC. You have to get them to share your vision. And given that we're a startup, and I would like to say all the problems that they could think of have been solved. No, they haven't. But they share the vision. They see that you guys are coming out with this technology, and there are issues with it, and we need to improve our, I'll give you an example, our path planning, and all you have to do is, we are 100% transparent. And, I don't have any qualms about telling them, our path planner is good, but we're working to make it excellent. We need to, we're implementing this, this, and this. So we're completely transparent with the farmers. And I think the thing that they like is, they think we're trustworthy, and they like what we're doing, and they believe in us. And that keeps them wanting to work with us more and more down the road.
No, I think that I think that you hit on it. Is one is an element of trust. In other words, now if you've built that, hey, I'm not going to sell you something that's not worthwhile. I'm going, it's a good product that, we worked with you before. It definitely makes it so that they will be willing to listen and understand what the product is and get that audience. Now, when you first went out into the marketplace and before you had your connections and your networks and everything else, and you're trying to educate the audience from scratch, how do you go about finding the people that you're even trying to educate? And how do you go about educating them once you find them?
Well, for us, number one, we were doing something so unique that we got a lot of press. And then, myself and my staff, I know a lot of farmers throughout the Midwest, in all the states here in the Midwest, especially in the Corn Belt.